Welcome to the Fusion Cell Podcast, The Military Effect. I'm your host, Jack Heath. Fusion Cell, the founding mission was and still is to this day, the mission bridging the gap between military talent and the civilian workplace. Matt Morrissey is the COO, and I call him the head coach of Fusion Cell, and he's our cellmate today. As we talk about Fusion Cell, he gives us an update. Matt, thanks for being with us on our Fusion Cell podcast.
Jack, thanks for being here, and thanks for supporting us and doing this.
Well, the military effect, this is important information, bridging that gap between military talent and the civilian workplace. Matt, talk about your or Fusion Cell's unique position within the DoD or the military world to get talent, because employers may want a great new team member, a new leader, but they don't have the credibility, the knowledge, or the access to the lanes within the military.
Well, Jack, you're exactly right. Most organizations that have a dedicated talent acquisition function, department, part of HR, wherever it lives, they don't have within that group veterans. They don't have within that group institutional knowledge of the Department of Defense, where to find these folks, how to get them to respond. And in building Fusion Cell, our delivery organization, the team that we've built over there, 95%, I think, are veterans themselves, right? Their backgrounds are 20 plus years in the military, different branches. Most of them have actually been in recruiting capacities while they were in the military.
So they know all sides of the fence.
They know all sides of the fence, right? It brings with them not only an understanding of how to navigate into the different communities, both active service members, reserve, guard, those that moved on to retire. They know how to find them. When they do find them, there's an automatic credibility, right? They speak the same language. They understand the acronyms, right? All the things that are foreign to those in the civilian world. And the candidates recognize that. They recognize right away when it's a veteran reaching out to them versus a civilian. One, they can get to them. Secondly, there's credibility when they get there.
Matt Morrissey in our Military Effect, the Fusion Cell podcast, I've seen, and you know this, I know this, I saw it when I was a civilian at the United States Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, the National Security Seminar. You've seen it when you've worked with Fusion Cell, high-level members of the Pentagon. They'll tell you, generals will tell you, we're real good at recruiting people, really good at training them, and trying to retain them, but our top priority is really not helping them transition to the civilian workplace. So that's a gap that Fusion Cell is really picking up and leading in nationally.
Yeah, and it's two-pronged, right? So half of our organization is organized and focused on working with the candidate pool, in this case, the veterans. Right? And all they do on a daily basis is build and bridge relationships to communities and folks that are either going to be transitioning, have been out there in the world already, or maybe even 15 years into an industry where they want to move and go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that's the side, that's the candidate delivery side where we've staffed up heavily with veterans themselves. The other side's job, and what we focus on, is with the companies. And we have over 100 years of staffing experience at Fusion Cell with folks that have brought talent and have brought strategies for recruiting to civilian companies. So we understand the other side of the fence as well.
And that's what's missing, I think, without Fusion Cell, you've grown. We're going to come back to this in a minute, but all this work with the veteran and for the veteran is free to the veteran. The only cost is to the business or employer once a successful fit has been made, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, how many years now, Fusion Cell, have you, since you started in New Hampshire, the Live Free or Die state?
Yeah, so Jack, you know this a little bit because you had something to say in it. The idea was born probably the early parts of 2018. And as we rolled into 2019 is when the structure of it started to really take place, the incorporation of it as a company. We got hit upside the head a little bit by the pandemic just as we were launching. We pivoted hard and actually used that year to bring some military public health officers to civilian companies to help with pandemic planning, which was something that wasn't planned, but it was something that we that hit the mission.
And the military is good at that, right? Planned for the unthinkable.
Yeah, and it showed a little bit of the DNA of our company because obviously in our business plan going into 2020, The word COVID didn't exist. We didn't know what it was. And we quickly pulled together a practice that went to Manchester Airport, Derryfield School, right? Companies across New Hampshire. We helped people get back in the building.
And then nationally.
As well. Yeah. So that was a very trying time for the company, but we ended up pretty much stronger on the other side. And since then, we've been honing our business model on which are the industries that are most going to benefit from the talent that we can get our hands on. And we placed well over 100 people last year in companies across the U.S.
Fusion Cell, the podcast of Military Effect. I'm Jack Heath. You're listening to Matt Morrissey, the COO of Fusion Cell. Matt, a lot of companies may have programs, they may have desires to hire veterans, not only because it feels good, and it's the right thing to do, but it's good for the business, good for the veteran. But they may not have a culture in that company for retaining the veteran. A lot of times people aren't happy in the first year or two of something. They may burn out, they may flame out, they may move on. But how do you leverage this military talent and your cellmates, as you call it, which I love, with organizations to kind of not only rein it in, but retain and have them thrive, because everyone wins in that environment? No one wants to bring in someone who's gone in a year.
Yeah, this is a hot topic, Jack. And one, to be honest with you, when I started the company and I started surrounding myself with veterans, I didn't quite understand it either. If you Google this topic, you'll find 100 articles and companies that say that they can come in and help make you military friendly versus military ready, and so on and so forth. The difference is, over the last 3 years, we've hired over 20 veterans at Fusion Cell. And I've built my own observations of what I see and what works and what doesn't work. First and foremost, the company itself.
You're saying even within your company?
Even within our company.
This is what you preach.
This is my own firsthand experience of what I've seen, right? First and foremost, you have to have a mission that they can get behind.
And they believe in. They are so used to that, and that is so central to being part of the institution of the DoD. And it doesn't mean that you have to be building warplanes, right? But there has to be a mission to what you're doing that they can get behind. Some sense of purpose. Right.
I see stages, right? So right out of the gates, you're going to get a ton of excitement of them leaving the military and a freedom that they feel. First thing they do, on the men's side, they grow mustaches, they grow beards, because they finally don't have to shave every morning, right? The women that we've hired, they get highlights in their hair, right? The first thing, there's this euphoria when they first come out.
You're no longer in the military protocols.
And they're excited about it, and there's a peak, there's a high. And at some point, usually in that 3 to 6 month period, there's a little bit of a crash. Right? Mm-hmm. Because now they're starting to realize that everything they've become so accustomed to, and the structure, the camaraderie, the purpose that was plated up for them every morning is gone. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them start to wonder, where can I get that back? And they start to miss that. And they start to overanalyze sometimes things that happen in the workplace, right? The first time they make a mistake, which anyone could make, it becomes bigger. They start to wonder, did I make this mistake because I'm ill-equipped to be in the civilian world? Did I make this mistake? What other mistakes am I going to make? Can I really do this? So there's a lot of self-doubt that I think happens at a higher rate than you'll get with a typical employee. You have to anticipate that that's going to happen, right?
And I imagine for the businesses, they need a culture and an environment that is veteran friendly, veteran knowledgeable, not just veteran ready, but one that's going to be sustaining. And what I mean, I've met a lot of veterans where it doesn't have to be their purpose, but they want to go into that building, go onto that Zoom call, be a part of that company, knowing the company has some sense of purpose, some sense of mission, some sense of making their community, their customers, the marketplace, the world, the country better. And I think veterans share that. So if companies recognize what's unique about the veteran, their chances of retaining that veteran and having the veteran spread that leadership of caring about the company are probably greater.
Yeah, and it's giving them, I think, very early the opportunity to have a voice in that for the company, right? Mm-hmm. Giving them opportunities very early to
and
flex
listening,
the
right? And listening, not just patronizing, but really listening.
I mean, I have a 26-year intelligence veteran that has never worked in the civilian world, but the things that he sees. I've been in staffing for 25 years. There are certain things that I just can't see anymore. And to give them the ability to question things, to say, why do we do things that way? It has a huge effect on these folks right out of the gates, right? They are very strategic thinkers in general. And that's one thing I think that gets missed.
Now, you're not a veteran by background, correct?
No.
But you lead a company where more than 90% of your employees are veterans.
Yeah.
How's that changed you?
I'll give an example, Jack. It's not uncommon on the anniversary of 9/11 that office chatter starts about, oh, where was I on 9/11? And everybody remembers. And you talk about, oh, I was at this office, or I was dropping off at school. Well, we did that this year on our team call on a Monday morning, and the veterans themselves who were enlisted told their stories of what 9/11 meant that day to them. And literally, I had goosebumps. The difference, like they're on a plane 3 days later, and they weren't going to be back for 6 months. I was in Germany when it happened, and I got stranded there. Right, I was a recruiter at the time. I came in the next day, and there was a line around the block of people wanting to enlist the next day.
Well, I can't tell you the number of Navy SEALs I've had the good fortune of getting to know and become friends with. I'll say, "Why'd you want to become a SEAL?" It's 9/11. Matt, let's talk about trends. We see a lot of trends now in the market, transitioning veterans, and trends you see.
Yeah, so there's approximately 250,000 veterans that are coming out every year.
250,000 every year.
250,000
out of the military, the branches.
Yep.
Wow.
And approximately 95% of those, they're looking for their next job. They're not done. About half of those say it's really hard to figure out where I'm going to be and where I'm going to go. And there's a lot of stats on how, the first year, 50% of those folks don't stay longer than a year. 2 years, it goes down. And, I think there's too much spotlight put on that, to be honest with you, because if you look at the trends of a typical civilian going into their first job now in today's world, the numbers aren't much better. So one of the things that we try and say to the veterans when they're looking for that first job is, first of all, don't beat yourself up. You don't have
to be so hard on yourself.
You don't have to come out and find a job that you're going to be at for the next 15, 20 years.
Right.
Nobody does that anymore. Right? And what we try and counsel them on is find a good company with a mission that you can get behind, with people that you feel you can trust. And if it's not the right position that you start out in, a good company is going to find a good spot for you somewhere within that org.
Or it's not going to be a bad experience in your life.
Either way.
Right.
You may decide after a year that this isn't good for both companies. What you've done is you just knocked out a bunch of things that you now know about yourself that you didn't know a year earlier.
Good point.
And you're probably going to have a very referenceable company to help you get into that next position, which could be even that much better. So we try to say, don't overanalyze those numbers.
It's a great point. So it's a step forward regardless.
Absolutely.
For everyone.
Absolutely.
Now, the economy is a tough thing to read. On my morning news talk radio show, I have experts, including the top people at Bank of America, trying to read this economy. Third quarter, Brian Moynihan, the CEO, are we going into a recession? But yet the jobs market is defying the odds here. Interest rates are going up. We see high-tech layoffs. But as much as people have jitters and the Fed's trying to slow inflation down, and we've hit bank jitters, the market is still red hot. So what do companies do in times like this in terms of their own labor force, and what do you see there? Yeah,
so I'll preface with I am no economist, and if you looked at my grades in economics in college, it would tell you that, right? But to your point, there's something really strange going on right now because when inflation's high, typically the unemployment rate starts to raise, wages get knocked down a little, spending gets knocked down a little, and there's a good effect on inflation. And everyone's scratching their heads because that's not happening right now in the jobs market. The jobs market, the jobless rate rose last month to 3.6%.
Still historically very low.
I mean, certain states you're looking at, in Florida, it's 2.6, right? In certain sectors, in transportation, it's 4.7, right? It's still not even anything that would register on the screen. And we're seeing that the pandemic probably had a lot to do with that, right? When the pandemic hit, there were a lot of early retirement packages. There are a lot of people that left the workforce that decided to not come back. There are a lot of programs put out there that incented people to not work. So the amount of people available for the jobs is still super low. And what we're seeing is our clients people are hoarding talent. Companies are hoarding talent. So those companies that need talent are still having a hard time finding them. There's 250,000 veterans that are coming into this workplace every year. And the diversity of the things they can do is across the board. There's 4,000 to 5,000 different military occupations. So our message to these clients is it is still hard. It's going to be hard. The good talent is not leaving their companies like they were a year ago. The great net resignation is over. I think people are a little spooked in the economy right now. They seem to be settling and staying in the companies where they are. Mm-hmm. You need a company to go out there and help you find that talent and get them out of their jobs and to move. And military veteran talent is a very good source for that right now.
You're listening to The Military Effect. I'm Jack Heath. Fusion Cell, the podcast. Matt Morrissey, really the head coach, the COO Cell made featured. Matt, let me try and wrap all this up a little bit to boil it down. You have a very deep, high-level background in staffing. Mm-hmm. Not a veteran yourself, but you've surrounded yourself with more than 90% veterans. You have one of the fastest-growing and most recognizable names now in the defense or Department of Defense world and military of a company out there with good intentions to help veterans and fill that gap that no one seems to have been able to do very well. It's been sporadic at best between military town and the civilian workplace. You're showing it. You're working with big companies. You're growing. So if I'm listening to this and I'm a company and I want to be on this Fusion Cell team, I want to meet one of your cellmates, what do I do? What's the best process? Well, how do I work with you? How do I contact? Can I talk to you? Do I talk with someone? Do I go to your website? What do you recommend to a company wanting to access this military talent for everything we've just heard?
It's pretty simple, Jack. And fusioncell.com, you head to our website, and there's plenty of buttons you can hit and places that you can go to get to us. We're very active on the conference world. We're at one this week. We have 4 folks that are at the Logistics Officer Symposium this week in St. Louis. So we're out there. You'll find us in Instagram and LinkedIn and a lot of the other social sites. But fusioncell.com is the easiest way. You click, someone will be in touch with you. We have a team of folks that will hop on a video call. We'll come see you if local, and we'll talk through your hiring challenges. And we'll be very honest to say which of the roles that you might be needing to move your projects forward align with the type of talent that we can get our hands on from the military. And if the answer is yes, we'll agree on working with them, and we'll find you some folks. If we find you some folks, you'll pay us a percentage of that first year salary. If we don't find you anyone, you won't. So there's
free to the veteran.
Free to the veteran. There's skin in the game on our end, because the only way that we fund what we're doing is if we're successful with you.
And a good source tells me that one of your co-founders, main founders, is Special Operative Tony Negron, Air Force Pararescue PJ, led the rescue mission on the only stealth fighter jet ever shot down in Bosnia, and the only pilot, and they rescued the pilot, and Tony's the real deal. So
Tony's the real deal.
Good stuff.
He's given us instant credibility.
Yeah.
We find ourselves with some of the best strategic advisors from the military, and it's because they kind of walked into some really interesting missions with Tony, and that's carried on, into his retirement.
All right, cellmate, COO Matt Morrissey, thank you. Fusion Cell, the podcast. This has been The Military Effect, our regular podcast. I'm Jack Heath. Until next time, fusioncell.com. We'll see you then.
Thanks, Jack.